Now, the just concluded spring meetings of the World Bank and the IMF went beyond fiscal policies, financial system stability, and the like. The meeting also focused on emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence and its expected impact on governance. And that was the focus of this panel on AI at the Washington Summit. Listen.
How do you see AI reshaping the global economy? How do you see it impacting advanced economies versus emerging markets? Do advanced economies have a leg up?
So thank you so much, Jennifer. AI could potentially have really a profound impact on the global economy. And some have even argued that it could be at the scale of the Industrial Revolution. So it could revolutionize business operations, public sector operations. There's a growing body of research which shows that it holds the potential for new revenue, cost savings, improved products and processes, augmenting worker capabilities, and some studies even find that it could raise labor productivity by 2 to 3 percentage points, and a few others argue that as much as 7 percentage points. So these numbers, what do they mean in the aggregate? Still hard to ascertain, but the potential gains could be very large. And the potential gains could be large for all countries. It could raise livelihoods, it could raise incomes across all countries. Now, that said, the impact will depend upon how it's adopted across countries, and it will depend upon the extent of integration across countries. And here, advanced economies could potentially have a leg up, because it may be easier for them to adopt AI.
Maybe I can start by looking at the speed of the impact of AI. If we look at digital technologies in our history, it takes a certain period of time when you reach 100 million users. If I look at fixed telephony, it took 75 years. When it comes to mobile, it was 16 years. Apple Store, probably 2 years. ChatGPT, you probably know, it took only 2 months to reach 100 million users. For us, this is transformative in a way. It really sets the new stage for connectivity and also a new stage for economic systems. So that's one. The second thing I want to mention is that we did a stock taking of all the World Bank projects that received funding from us in 7 different sectors. And our initial assessment is that for all the 7 sectors, including health, education, agriculture, transport, etc., we are seeing initial positive impact from AI adoption. Again, AI is not a new thing. Generative AI is, but we have been applying AI already in our operations. For me, the sectoral applications, the productivity gain and the potential for countries to leapfrog is huge.
We've seen the impact of technologies like mobile telephony and how it's been able to help Africa really make significant gains. It doesn't mean that there aren't gaps. And part of the gaps that exist both in coverage gaps and usage gaps, it's that hard infrastructure that requires really massive investment. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the connectivity. We need to expand high-speed internet access to the majority of the continent. Right now, we're only scratching the surface. It's only really covering about 40% of the population. We need access to reliable and affordable electricity. We need access to robust data sets, and also the cost of data, for people to access that data, as well as the cost of devices. And so there's really, significant gaps in that infrastructure, but, and I think this is the right forum, for people to kind of double down on their investments, and also, be creative in terms of the kind of capital that we can attract, not just relying on governments to do that. So we've certainly seen, the private sector play a big role in telecommunications, but we can really take it a step further to really, cover that gap, particularly with those that are, truly underserved in the rural areas. But I think one area, if we move away from infrastructure and we just talk about, we're in this kind of inflection point in the evolution of AI, and Africa already has a young, dynamic, innovation ecosystem that is really ready to kind of harness the opportunities. And so as we're prioritizing that investment in the hard infrastructure, we need to find a way to level the playing field for the innovation ecosystem. So, just to give one specific example, coming from Rwanda, we've been working with a startup that has been training a large language model in our local language, Kinyarwanda. And we've already seen them improve the accuracy, starting from the model not understanding the language at all to about 70% accuracy. And they want to deploy this to the 75,000 community health workers. But for them to be able to do that, just for if one health worker were to do one inquiry per day, we're talking about $6,000. So that's the kind of level of, kind of computing costs that we're talking about. And so you can imagine it's really quite a barrier to entry for the startup ecosystem. So I think as we're looking at the hard infrastructure, let's try to empower those developers that are already there so they can fully, take advantage of this moment.
Mike, Crystal just talked to some of the challenges there, but Google believes that AI could be a game changer for emerging markets. Is that right? You think it could help pull them out of poverty, help narrow that gap when it comes to access to education, healthcare, food insecurity?
Say that AI is going to be a silver bullet for any of those problems you just mentioned, right? I think it's a tool like any technology, but it's also a little bit more than just a tool. It's going to be in that rarefied company of general purpose technologies, which you can arguably count on one hand, like steam engine, combustion engine, electricity, ICT, that share three characteristics. One is broad applicability. And already, as someone has mentioned, we see AI everywhere already, right? And we see it in search, we see it in autocorrect, in maps, and in translation devices. But its use is going to become much more pervasive over time. The second characteristic is capacity to improve. And I think we're seeing that on a weekly basis. Just the performance of these models continue to outstrip one another. And then the third is leading to innovation spillovers, right? And I think we're also seeing a lot of complementary investment and a lot of complementary innovation around AI models. When it comes to development, I think the IMF staff discussion note from January, maybe, when it came out, it was a great report, and it had a very sensible baseline, which was that emerging markets would lag in the diffusion of this technology, and they would also probably have a muted impact compared to higher income countries. And I think, again, sensible baseline, but there's also a credible case that can be made that emerging markets can exceed those expectations for a couple of reasons. One is what Crystal mentioned. I mean, we're talking about young, digitally savvy populations. AI will be the first major technology that's rolled out in a world in which there are more internet and mobile phone users in low middle income countries than there are in high income countries. And there's also inherent characteristics of the underlying technology that kind of lend themselves to accessibility. The first of those is that you can engage with these tools through ordinary language. The second, which is related, is that these tools are increasingly multimodal, right? So inputs can be in the form not only of code or text, they can be in the form of voice or image, and that breaks down barriers. So when you combine that ease of use with these underlying population characteristics, I think it's easy to get excited about what could happen. And we see that reflected in optimism. Google has funded some surveys with Ipsos globally, and actually it's emerging markets, those that are surveyed in emerging markets tend to be much more optimistic about the technology's impact than those in higher income countries.